I've spent 19 years pulling dead ships out of the black, and I can tell you the quiet ones are always worse than the loud ones. A ship screaming distress on every band, you know what you're getting. A ship that's gone completely silent, drifting with its running lights still on like somebody just stepped out for a smoke. That's the one that makes the hair on your arms stand up before you've even matched velocity. The Anthem had been silent for 6 years. Insurance had written her off. The crew manifest had been closed out and paid, and by every rule of salvage law she belonged to whoever got a magnetic clamp on her hull first. That was us. Me, my tow rig the Drehorn, and a bounty that would keep the lights on through winter. I want to be clear, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was looking for copper wiring and intact reactor housings. Trouble found me anyway, the way it does. The old girl's internal power was still limping along on backup cells, just enough to keep a few systems breathing. Halfway down the spine corridor I found out what those systems were. A passenger theater, half collapsed, still running a projection loop nobody had shut off in 6 years. Some opera or another, ghost-light figures in ball gowns turning slow circles over torn carpet. The recording stuttering every few seconds like the ship itself was tired of holding the illusion together. It wasn't haunted. It was just broken, playing dress-up in the dark because nobody had told it to stop. I walked through it without much more than a glance. Pretty lights don't pay my fuel bill. What paid attention to me was the thing in the cargo hold. I heard it before I saw it. A low, rolling sound like gravel shifting under a tarp. Coming from behind a bulkhead door somebody had welded shut from the outside. Welded shut, not locked. That's a detail that tells you everything about what the last crew thought of whatever was on the other side. I cut the weld anyway. 19 years of salvage teaches you that whatever's sealed in the dark is usually worth more than the wiring. It came at me low and fast out of the shadow, and for about half a second I thought that was the whole story of my life. Right there, ending in a cargo hold on a dead ship nobody would ever come looking for. Then it stopped, 6 feet from my chest, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off it, and it just stopped. Held there, low and coiled, this long, lean shape the color of a bruise, fur that seemed to bend the light around it instead of reflecting it. Not an illusion, not one of the theater's ghosts. Something real enough that the deck plating groaned under its weight. I didn't run. Running is for people who think they can outrun something built to outrun everything. I crouched down instead, slow, and set my scanner on the deck between us like an offering, because my hands needed to be doing something that wasn't reaching for a weapon. "Somebody left you here," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. That's a hell of a thing to do to somebody. It watched me for a long time. Predator eyes, no mistaking that. Flat, gold, unblinking. But there was something else moving behind them too. Something that looked a lot like exhaustion. 6 years sealed in a dark hold will do that to a person, and I had a feeling it would do the same to whatever this was. I called it ash, because that's what the fur looked like under my helmet light, and because it needed a name that wasn't the thing in hold 3 on my log. I don't know if it understood the word. I know it started following me 18 hours later, padding along 4 meters behind at a distance that felt less like fear and more like courtesy. And by the 3rd day it was lying across the hatch of whatever compartment I was working in like it had appointed itself my door. I fed it protein rations it didn't need and water it barely touched, because feeding something is how you tell it you're not afraid of it, and somewhere in there I stopped being afraid of it too. It never asked me for anything. It just watched the corridors I wasn't watching, and once, when a support strut let go without warning and came down where I'd been standing 2 seconds earlier, I found out later I hadn't been standing there because Ash had put its whole body against my shoulder and moved me 6 inches to the left without either of us discussing it. I should have called it in the moment I found it. Company policy on undocumented life forms is very clear. I didn't, because company policy is written by people who've never had something 6 years alone in the dark decide, on its own, that you were worth staying near. Company found out anyway. Salvage rigs report their scans automatically, whether you want them to or not, and 11 days in, a cutter with the Reclaim insignia on its hull matched velocity with the Drehorn, and a man named Bellamy Croft came aboard the Anthem wearing a suit that cost more than my ship, and carrying a bounty writ that named my cargo hold find as hazardous undocumented biological asset. Anthem wreck, terminate on site, bonus payable. "You've been feeding it," Croft said, looking at the ration wrappers stacked by the hold entrance like they were evidence at a trial. "That's 100,000 credit fine, Salvor, before we even get to the containment breach." "It's not contained," I said. "It's a guest." He laughed at that. Actually laughed, a short bark of a thing, and looked at the 2 enforcement men behind him like I'd said something worth repeating at dinner. "A guest. You hear that? Man's made friends with company property. It's not company property. It's not anybody's property. It's been sitting in a welded room for 6 years and I opened the door. And now it's a liability, with your fingerprints on the feeding log, Croft said, and unclipped something from his belt that I didn't like the shape of. Step back from the hold, Salver. We'll handle it from here. I want to say I had a plan. I didn't. I put myself in the doorway of the hold because that seemed like the only thing worth doing, and I said, easy, to a room that had gone very still behind me, meaning it as much for the 2 enforcement men as for Ash. Croft's patience ran out fast. He raised the tool on his belt. A stun lance, I realized, cranked well past the setting anyone uses on livestock, and that was the moment the stillness behind me stopped being stillness. Ash came off the deck without a sound, which is somehow worse than a roar, and Croft's confidence lasted exactly as long as it took the shadow-colored shape to close the 6 meters between them. It didn't kill him. I want that on record, because I think about it a lot. It had every right to, every reason to, 6 years of reasons. And instead it took the stun lance out of his hand along with 2 fingers worth of his glove, put him on the deck on his back, and stood over him with its weight square on his chest, breathing slow, until the 2 enforcement men had both dropped their own weapons and put their hands where I could see them. Nobody moved for a long moment. Croft lay there, this man who'd walked in with a bounty writ and a suit worth more than my ship, and looked up at 6 years of somebody else's silence looking back down at him, and I watched every ounce of authority drain out of his face in real time. Call it off, he said, voice gone thin. It's not mine to call, I said. It's not anybody's. That's the part you didn't read in the file. He canceled the writ from the deck, flat on his back, with Ash's weight still on his sternum, and I don't think I've ever watched a man sign a document that fast. His crew hauled him up and off my ship inside the hour, and none of them looked back at the hold on their way out. The crew back at the yard started calling it the standing account, after word got around. The idea that some debts don't get logged anywhere official, they just get paid, quietly, by something that remembers exactly who opened the door. I don't disagree. Ash still sleeps across my hatch most nights, 6 feet of muscle and patience curled up like it weighs nothing at all, and I still don't know what it is, not really. Not by any name a registry would recognize. I know it was owed 6 years of somebody's attention and nobody ever paid it. I know I cut 1 weld and got the whole account settled in my favor. For good, without ever asking for it. That's the only kind of debt worth having, if you ask me. The kind that pays itself forward the second you stop being afraid of the dark.